Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hub World Podcast. Today's episode will have us covering Pikmin 4. My name is Matteo, and today I'm joined by
Gules.
Whether you're joining us from YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, be sure to like and subscribe. Now, let's get this discussion going. So, if you clicked on this video, then you know it's episode 80 of the Hub World Podcast. Bit of a landmark episode, I guess. I didn't think we'd get to 80, to be honest with you. But it's kind of cool that we got here. And I guess technically we've done a lot more than 80 if you count like our E3 breakdowns and like the mini episodes and stuff like that we've done. Like my guess is probably we're close to 100 if not past it by now, but the core episodes of the Hub World Podcast we're at 80. So and there's no signs of us slowing down anytime soon.
Quite exciting. Maybe we should housekeep a little because we've been doing some stuff the last few weeks. Matteo, have you played anything? Have you been watching anything? Anything worth mentioning?
Because we're doing a dedicated Pikmin episode, the main thing I've been playing is Pikmin, but obviously I can't talk about that now. But just in terms of like other games I've been playing, obviously this year is the 25th anniversary of Ocarina of Time, so I dusted off my 3DS and I'm chipping away at Ocarina 3D. That's my absolute favorite version of that game. It's just so incredible. I've played Ocarina 3D, I think now, including this time, it's like 7 times. I just love that game to death. I'm just about to start Dodongo's Caverns, so... And then I bought Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe for Switch. Oh, geez. It wasn't on Prime Day. It was on sale randomly before Prime Day for $60, so I'm like, okay, I'll buy it. Haven't played it because there's just been so much stuff to play lately. So now there's a bit of a lull between Pikmin 4 and our trip. So my goal is to finish Kirby before we go on our vacation. Yeah, I really like what they've done with that remake. Visually, it's just stunning. I like the art style of that game, and like the black outlines really make everything pop. And the mini games are so fantastic, especially the mini games that have come back from previous Kirby games. It's such a great package. I don't know if it's really worth the full price, but if you can get it on sale, I definitely recommend it. Like it's one of the best Kirby games even without the mini games, but it just makes it a good party game as well as a good single player game. So in terms of watching stuff, Gino and I are going through The Office right now. I think we're at season 4 at the time of recording this. Gino's never watched The Office from beginning to end, and I just love that show so much. It's my favorite comedy of all time, and it just doesn't get old. Like, I laughed just as hard on the second viewing as I did when I first watched it a couple of years ago. So, but aside from that, I haven't seen any movies lately. We're going to be going to see Blue Beetle probably when it comes out. We might be like the only ones seeing that movie because I do not have high expectations of the box office for that movie, but I gotta support Blue Beetle because he is one of my favorite DC heroes, obscure or mainstream. So, but yeah, that's about it for me lately. What about you, Jules? What have you been playing and watching?
Well, last year I purchased the Square Enix game Triangle Strategy on the day it came out because I'm a big fan of Octopath. And I played it for about an hour and then put it down and never played it again. But recently I've been hearing a lot of stuff about it. It got like a random update like a couple months ago
Oh, that's
that
cool.
added like an epilogue. And so I was like, maybe I'll give it another shot and just try it because I'm a teacher. I'm poor this summer, so I can't really buy new games. So I was like, okay, I'll try Triangle Strategy. And I played it, and I can't believe I didn't play it last year. If I had played it last year, it would have been a contender for my game of the year for last year.
Wow.
It's an incredible game. I think it's at least on par with like the great Fire Emblem games. It's exceptional the way that it approaches like decision making and consequence and alternate routes, and I actually went through and I did all 4 endings because I actually was like interested to see them all. So it was really fun. I enjoyed that game. And then before that, I had played Final Fantasy 16, which is incredible. As of right now, is definitely one of my games I would throw into that game of the year kind of like rhetoric. I would have loved to do a dedicated podcast about Final Fantasy 16, and who knows, maybe we will once Gino finishes it, and Riley could hop in because he watched me play the whole game. But Final Fantasy 16 is also like up there. Like I really really enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of talk online about Final Fantasy 16, a lot of disappointment around it for various, I'm sure, valid reasons. But as somebody who has actually enjoyed every Final Fantasy game I played, I thought this was one of the better Final Fantasies. I thought it was really awesome. And I guess I just buy into the it doesn't need to be turn based. It doesn't need to have like full RPG elements. I'm fine with whatever form it takes, and I'm going to appreciate it for what it is, not what it's not. And I feel like a lot of the criticisms about the game aren't about what it is, it's about what it's not. And I don't think you should ever judge something based off what you want it to be, because what's in the game is really incredible. And then I watched the second season of Sonic Prime. I loved the first season of Sonic Prime. I was very bored by the second season. And I think most of that is because the marketing was very much like pushing this idea that Shadow and Sonic were going to team up because Shadow was barely in the first season, and then he was barely in this season too. And I was just like, okay,
Oh, poor Shadow.
he was the second character they announced was in the show when they were like marketing the show, and then he was barely in it. And then they used him to market the second season, and then he was barely in it. And I'm just kind of getting sick of it. I'm like, I've seen enough Rouge and Amy and Tails. Like, give me somebody fresh. Like, I don't need to see the same characters over and over again.
Sega, just let fans enjoy the most popular character in the franchise aside from Sonic. Like it's a we said it, I forgot what episode it was. We were talking about Shadow as well. We're like Shadow is like disgustingly underrepresented in Sonic
Yeah,
media now.
for how popular he is, it's really really absurd how little he actually appears in anything. Like, and he appears like just enough that they can market, oh, Shadow the Hedgehog is in this, but he never plays a role. They did the same thing with Sonic Forces, and it drove me nuts. He wasn't in Sonic Frontiers. He hasn't been in any of the classic games, even though I feel like they should bring him in.
Yeah.
Um,
Watch him do it for the
and
movie. For Sonic 3.
No, that would be. But you know what? Like, hopefully, because Sonic 3 is coming out and Shadow's going to play a big role, that will either coincide with a lot of Shadow stuff or like resurge a lot of Shadow stuff. I'd like to see that. But yeah, Sega, bring Shadow back because it's criminal that you have this super popular character that everybody likes and you're not utilizing him at all. But I guess that's what happens when you spin off a super popular character and the game is awful, and then you give him a massive role in the next major title, which is also awful.
Hey, your words, not mine.
I mean, I'm talking based on general consensus, not my own. Sonic 06 is fine. Shadow the Hedgehog is actually bad. Well, I think that's pretty much it.
Just quickly, I'm just looking ahead at the logjam of game releases, especially once we get into October. Just
Yeah,
quickly, the games I'm interested in playing within an 8-day period of time, we have Assassin's Creed Mirage, Spider-Man 2, Mario Wonder, and also, which it's a leaked rumor, or it's a leaked release date. It hasn't officially been announced yet, but Sonic Superstars. Those four games are going to be coming out within an 8-day period. And then in November, Persona 5 Tactica and Mario RPG come out on the same day of November 17th. I have no idea how I'm going to sort of split my time between these six games, but
you missed a very major game in there.
well, that's why I said my personal games.
Well, it should be there. WarioWare Move It, also known as WarioWare Smooth Moves 2, comes out 2 weeks after Mario Wonder and Spider Man.
I'm actually considering buying it, but like if I'm not going to be playing potentially Sonic Superstars and Assassin's Creed Mirage like at launch,
Yeah,
I don't know what to
that's
do.
fair. Yeah, no, it is definitely a predicament. It's sad because Sonic is the kind of series that I really want to support day one, and I like Sonic Superstars in the concept, and I want to buy it day one. I want to get the pre-order exclusive stuff. I want to get the alternate cover on the day one edition stuff. But it's also hard because it's like it comes out 3 days before Mario Wonder, which is the same type of game but going to be like better. Sorry,
Yeah.
Sonic. And Spider-Man 2, which is my most anticipated game of this year, which like I'm not even going to play Mario Wonder because of Spider-Man. So it's a predicament where it's like maybe I'll buy it, but I won't play it.
Mhm.
We'll see. Or maybe they'll push it. Maybe they'll leak release dates wrong.
Speaking of buying it and like sitting on it, that's what I thought that this upcoming game was going to be about. Like, I really thought Pikmin 4 was going to be that for me because that's what literally every other Pikmin game in the series ended up being at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's so funny because it's not necessarily similar for me, but like I said, I'm pretty poor in the summer as a result of being a teacher. And I don't know, I debated getting Pikmin 4.
Hmm.
And as you know, I got it 2 weeks later than when it came out. Like you had already finished the game by the
Yeah.
time I bought it.
Like, I
Um,
played the demo and I told people, I'm like, I have never finished a Pikmin game prior to Pikmin 4. I played the demo, which is really just the first area of the game, essentially. And I said, this snippet of the game that I played, I had more fun doing this than I did at any point in the Pikmin series. Like, I really pushed people to play this game because
yeah, you did.
Pikmin has never been my forte, but now like I think Pikmin might be, or at least Pikmin 4. Like, I still don't know. Like, I don't think Pikmin 4 has changed my opinion on the series, but I think Pikmin 4 is my favorite Nintendo game in a very long time.
Oh wow,
Like, maybe
that's high
since
praise.
like Mario Odyssey, I want to say. So
Wow,
yeah,
that's a lot of praise.
I could not put Pikmin 4 down when I started playing it. Like, even after I finished the demo, I'm like, oh my god, it's a week before the game comes out. It's like I counted down the days. I bought it the second it came out. I got my Ochi coasters as a pre-order bonus. I'm never going to use those because they're very bad quality. But when I started that game up, I was constantly thinking about Pikmin. Like, even when I was like at work and I was moving things around, I'm like, I feel like a Pikmin right now. I'm moving things. Like, I thought Pikmin when I wasn't playing.
I know what you mean. I've literally
Yeah,
the last 2 days I've had Dandori dreams.
yeah.
Like literally, like I've been and like I heard like sounds coming from like because like I where I live there's like train and like factory sounds all the time. I swear to you, I took a nap today and I
Mhm.
had to like listen really closely because I swear those sounds sounded like when you're like rapidly pressing A throwing Pikmin and then
Yeah.
slowly becoming like when you just throw the last few. I was like, oh my god, I have
Hmm.
Pikmin brain.
Yeah,
Um,
like it's just I haven't been captivated by a game like that in a very, very, very long time. Like, especially
yeah.
just like, and like it was weird because I was the only one playing it at that time, right? It wasn't like when we all played Pokemon or Smash Bros where our entire Hub World group is invested in this game. It was just me for essentially until you bought the game and you played it. And now Gino's going to play it after now. So like I've like I said, I've never really had an experience like that where like a game is completely taken over my entire thoughts. Like I just could not stop thinking about this game, and I'm just so sad that it's over too. Like, I just
Yeah,
enjoyed it
I
so
felt that
much.
too. Well, before we get into the core discussion, we should say this discussion will be like full spoiler. Like, we're not going to hold back. We do want to talk about like what we really liked about the game, what we appreciated, and other kind of things, like, and what the future of Pikmin might look like. So, if you haven't played the game and you're a little wary about like spoilers, like whether that be story or just gameplay, you might want to put this one down and come back to it after you've played it. But if you're totally cool just hearing about the game, keep on listening because we're gonna overview it. But let's just start with this because I know you've told me before, Mateo, that so I just a little bit of history. I played the first Pikmin game on GameCube. Like I've beaten
Mhm.
all the games like when they've come out. Now, Mateo, from what I understand, you've played all the Pikmin games, but you've never finished a Pikmin game until Pikmin 4. Like, what do you think Pikmin 4 did differently or better that just captivated you in this way that like it actually pushed you to finish it?
I don't even know if like there's one thing in particular. It's just this game is just so optimized and well designed. Like every Pikmin game, in my opinion, it's better than the one that came before. Like new systems get implemented and they fix a problem that I've had in the one before it. But I guess actually, really, like the one thing, the big difference maker in Pikmin 4 compared to the other games is Ochi. Ochi is the Swiss Army knife that he does everything. The chargeability, the ability to dig, the ability to pull things with incredible strength, the ability to run around. You can have him as a separate playable character, like you can control both the captain and Ochi at the same time. The ability to sniff out treasure and leaflings and things that you're missing, and the fact that you can upgrade him to be immune to statuses. He can help knock down like electric fences and stuff like that. Like Ochi is a tank. Without Ochi, this game would not be as good. He's like the best dog Nintendo's ever made, also, in my opinion. Ochi is the best boy. Like, I remember when they showed him first in the Nintendo Direct, I'm like, this is stupid. What, like, what's the point of this dog? And I felt kind of that way until the demo. And then when I played the demo, I'm like, this dog is necessary in this game. Like that is the huge gameplay, like revolutionary concept that they've brought into the series.
Yeah.
Ochi is more important than like any Pikmin they've ever introduced in games prior, or like the caves when they were brought into Pikmin 2. Like Ochi is the biggest addition the series has ever had.
Yeah.
And that cannot be understated.
It's almost like the way I look at Ochi is not a Pikmin, right? Like Ochi, like story and gameplay wise, like perceive Ochi as a playable character, and like I think he's the natural step from Pikmin 3, allowing you to have multiple captains that you switch between. I feel like
Mhm.
Ochi was the natural step. Like you no longer have multiple captains. You have Ochi and you have your player character, but you can separate them, and they ultimately can do very similar things. Ochi obviously has way more to him than just like the base character, but like that was the natural evolution. It's like not only can you split up your Pikmin party by using Ochi, but Ochi also serves as like when he is combined with your captain, like serves as like a traversal aspect, as a combat aspect. Like he definitely is a very cool addition to the game.
Like the speed in which you can take down enemies with Ochi and Ice Pikmin is incredible. Like when you just charge and like all the Pikmin jump off Ochi to hit an enemy, they freeze them instantaneously. And then if you have purple Pikmin on you, it just shreds the like even bosses, like not like the high end bosses in the game, but like decent enemies, just like the crab, the big crab from Pikmin 3 that comes back in this game. Like he dies almost instantaneously. Like that crab would take you a decent amount of time to kill in Pikmin 3 or early on in Pikmin 4, but when you have a fully upgraded Ochi with 100 Pikmin with ice and purple and whatever, it just like that, it's gone. I feel like, and I know you have some problems with this, but like the difficulty of the game is kind of like it. I feel like it can be difficult early on, and in certain points, like here and there, like against specific bosses or like specific Dandori battles and stuff like that. But there really isn't. I wouldn't even call it a difficulty curve. Like it's difficult, and then the game becomes a breeze after a certain point. Like the first, like the only time I would have difficulty is my first day of exploring a new area. I want to get a lay of the land, and like I learn things like, oh, I need this Pikmin here. I need to concentrate on draining the water, just say in the I think it's the third or fourth area, or like there's just environmental tasks like that are my priority, and I find that getting my bearings in these worlds can be tough at points. But when I have Ochi with me, like I can have all my Pikmin hop on him, and I can go over water, or I can do stuff like that, and it's just Ochi makes the game really easy, and in some instances, so there's a bit of a give and take there. Like he's a like Ochi is an amazing addition, but if you are playing Pikmin for the challenge, I can see how people would be upset by that because like it kind
Yeah.
of he kind of just like gets rid of all of the challenge that the series is also well known to have. So
Yeah, Ochi alone isn't the reason why the game feels too easy. He definitely adds a huge layer to the combat, and definitely, like you said, as you upgrade things, it becomes very easy to take down enemies that historically have been very, very tough to take down. Which I don't think is necessarily an issue for everybody. I think what Ochi does is he makes the game more accessible.
yeah.
He makes a game for players who have found the game challenging before. It makes it a little easier. And I think honestly it boils down to one thing. It's not even the combat. It's not even the like traversal over water and all that. What Ochi does that like really primarily changes the game is the simple aspect of all the Pikmin can hop onto him. That's it.
Mhm.
Because part of the thing with Pikmin that makes it so challenging is that having a big squad of 100 Pikmin, of course, means that you can take down really big enemies because you have a lot of Pikmin. But
Mhm.
the problem is, like, you don't have control over every individual Pikmin and their location, and especially for those enemies that roar or breathe fire
Roll or stuff.
or yeah, do things that like cause your Pikmin to like disperse. That chaos creates opportunities for the enemies to eat them because it only
Mhm.
takes them a couple seconds for one of the toads to slam a few of your Pikmin or a Bulborb to come over and munch on a few, right? Like, and that's
Mhm.
historically how you lose a lot of Pikmin is the fact that there you have this big like mob
Mhm.
that you can't really fully control. Like it's the area is huge, and Ochi kind of that was one of the things that I noticed early on is that Ochi trivialized that aspect because I never felt like I didn't have control over every single Pikmin that I took with me, regardless of how many I had, because they were all sitting on him. And then when I had enemies that roared, for example, like the whole idea of like the Emperor Bullbacks or whatever, right, is to roar and disperse your Pikmin, and in that chaos go and eat a bunch or slam on them. I never felt like that was a threat because if they were all on Ochi, then I could just run away.
And the fact that
So
Ochi can like when you charge, you have if you have a full army of Pikmin, your 100 Pikmin will attack the enemy
all
immediately,
go, yeah,
right?
for
They'll
sure,
impact
yeah,
massive damage right away, as opposed
yeah.
to like you have to fling each Pikmin individually and your damage builds over time. No, it's 100 Pikmin at full strength right away.
Which can be good or bad. I actually found in the later parts of the game that I still just flung my Pikmin, but I'll talk about that later. Why I
Mhm.
chose to do that, but yeah, OG I think is a good addition. I think he makes the game way more accessible. I think some of his abilities are quite strong, and they do trivialize the game a little bit.
Mhm.
However, I also have to acknowledge that using those things ultimately is a choice. Like you could play the game if you felt like the game was too easy. Ultimately, you could not upgrade Ochi. You don't have to upgrade him. It's not necessary to upgrade Ochi. You could keep him at his like you can never use any of his pup points, and then that will make him a little like less viable in the
Useful.
later areas that are supposed to
Yeah.
be difficult, right? Like you can choose never to ride him so that the Pikmin don't jump on him and still have that classic feel. Like ultimately, you can choose to make the game tougher if you want a challenge. It's totally okay to do that. And I think that's why Ochi, I don't think, is the reason the game feels too easy. I actually think Ochi is a very good addition, and I think it's just cool. And then they kind of pairing Ochi with the other dog Moss that follows around Olimar is really cool because then when you have those Dandori battles, you kind of get to see the different dogs like function, right? Like I thought it was really cool that Moss could eat things and like carry them. And then when you get that ability for Ochi halfway through the game, I was like, oh, this is really cool. And it was actually one of my most used thing when we were doing the Dandori challenges, because the Dandori challenges are all about collecting everything as quick as possible. A lot of the time when I was in those, I would leave my Pikmin to do things like gather the like gold piles or the piles of like crystal or like breaking down walls. And I would just get Ochi, like I'd take him to go find like the biggest things and just get him to take it because he could just eat it.
Mhm.
So he is super useful in that new idea and framework of like how do you use your time management efficiently, which honestly isn't something that was ingrained into the past game, because that's the thing. It's like time management is a big aspect of 1 and 3.
Mm-hmm. But
However, the time management was approached differently.
like they didn't teach you. I feel like Pikmin 4 teaches you how to manage your time and manage your Pikmin, whereas the other games kind of just expected you to know how to do that already.
Yeah, I think I think that's fine, but I think like what's interesting is that in the past games in 1 and 3, and I mean I'm sure speedrunners would disagree, but like once you've mastered the game, it's a lot different. But I never felt like in 1 and 3 they wanted you to separate your Pikmin. Like I felt like it was always safest to keep them with you. Whereas I feel like four's approach was very much like, how can you have different squads of Pikmin doing different things at the same time to maximize time? Which was interesting because it was a very different approach, and I really appreciated the Dandori challenges and battles for that, because I've never found myself in past games like leaving 15 Pikmin doing something and taking a bunch of Pikmin somewhere else to
Yeah.
do something else. Like that was something really cool. It also really highlights the differences in the Pikmin, because then it makes you like consider like, okay, which Pikmin am I going to get to do what? Like what Pikmin actually excels at certain things. Like things as simple as like carrying bits versus carrying like a whole object. Like which one am I going to allocate to which? Like what maximizes the time. But in general, I think my biggest gripe with the game, which I think Ochi adds to this, is ultimately I do feel that the challenge of the game was virtually not non-existent, but it was very reduced from the previous games, and that challenge being reduced also to me made the charm of the world feel more empty. It was a mix of the rewind feature, because you can rewind, like, for those of you who haven't played the game, you can rewind the game at any point to like a minute or 2 minutes before. So if you lose a bunch of Pikmin, you can rewind, which is one way to trivialize things. But just like Ochi, like that's completely your choice. You can choose not to use the rewind feature. But the big one that I think just in general really made the game feel too easy was the fact that this is the first Pikmin game where enemies don't respawn at all.
Permadeath enemies.
Yeah, like all the enemies, like once you've killed them, they're gone. Not only does that kind of like hurt the challenge of the game, but I feel like it also hurts the world, because then it just felt like every additional time I went back to the levels, one, they felt easier, which shouldn't be the case. Like they shouldn't feel easier because there's less enemies. They should feel easier because you know the area and you know where the enemies are and you know what kind of enemies are where, and you have way more Pikmin. That's why in previous games, that's why the world felt easier every time you went back, because you're like, okay, I know this world. Like I know this area now because I've explored it. I've done it. I know which enemies pop up. I know which enemies are where, and now I have an army of Pikmin, and now I know how to allocate them and time manage to get done what I need to get done. And I always appreciated that you had this relationship with the world. It always felt hostile, even if you felt more equipped to deal with the hostility. Whereas this world felt less and less hostile. So not only are you growing in power because Ochi is getting stronger and you're gathering more Pikmin and more Pikmin types, but the level is increasingly getting easier and easier because nothing is respawning. And then that also makes, like, acquiring more Pikmin way tougher, which is really annoying, because when you only get the ability to spawn like flying and white and purple Pikmin later in the game, but I don't have any enemies to bring to the onions, and I just have to rely on the few flowers that respawn every day. I'm just like, this kind of sucks. That's my major gripe.
But then you have me on the other hand, where like having the deal with the enemies coming back every day was, I think, part of the reason why I felt a little bit less motivated to finish the previous games in the series is just, oh, I got to deal with this Bulborb again. Hopefully he doesn't wipe out like a third of my Pikmin or like stuff like that. Or like I feel like Pikmin 4 is more focused on exploration, and I feel like the only way for them to really have that focus is to not have the enemies come back. Like you
Yeah.
you complete an area and then you look for everything in the area and then you move on to the next place. Like I feel like having the enemies come back every time. Like there was that one part in the water area, I think it's area 3 or 4, where there's like the little mountain you have to climb up, and there's enemies spitting down like the boulders.
The rocks,
So
yeah.
imagine having to deal with that every single time you load back into that level. I don't know. I don't think I would have appreciated it if they would have had that. But like that to me is something that it's simple enough where maybe they like patch that into the game at some point. Like they really like they add that as like a hard mode or something.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm hoping. I'm hoping they add like a classic or a hard mode, maybe eventually that just has the respawning. Because even in the past games, the enemies didn't respawn the next day. I think it was every second or third day. And I feel like, especially with this game, is where I wanted it. Like in past games, it did frustrate me at times because yeah, you're right. Like sometimes I'm like, that part was so hard. But I feel like this game gives you so many cool tools that going back and having to do those things again would feel fine. Like having to go back, for example, like that part you're talking about, the hill where all the rocks are going. But now, for example, having Ochi way more equipped, or having rock Pikmin, or being able to start that area at the top of the hill because there's a base there, and
Yeah.
like those kind of rewards of like I navigated this and I have more at my disposal, so now I can do this. Just I feel like that's something the game needed, and it also felt like once I finished Pikmin 4, and even once I finished an area, there was like never a reason to go back.
Yeah, like where were the bingo battles? Like Pikmin 3 Deluxe had that bingo battle multiplayer mode, which was so fun. That could have been like a cool like the multiplayer in general in this game is just not great.
A challenge mode, or
That would have been fantastic.
yeah, and I think that's why I wish that the enemies respawned, is because I felt like had the enemies respawned, for example, every single time I got an onion, like when I got the rock onion or when I got the flying onion, I probably would have went back to an old area and spent a couple days just going around killing enemies and spawning a bunch of Pikmin.
Mhm.
Like I would have done those things. Whereas like now I was just like, what's the point? Because like even if I go back to that area, there's like nothing in that area. There's not a single enemy. There's not a single collectible. There's like literally nothing. That area will feel empty, and that I don't know. To me, that just felt really weird for the Pikmin world. It's such a minor gripe because not everybody's gonna go back. Even the fact that like in a Pikmin game before, part of the reason that I approached, like, I mean, I'm also a completionist, so I usually finish an area before I move on. But part of the reason that I would do that in previous games is because I'm like, I want to get everything before everything respawns.
Mhm.
Whereas in this game, I'm just like, okay, so if I had done like 60% of Area 1 and then went 2/3 of the way through the game and then was like, okay, I'm going to go back and do Area 1, I'd go back there and everything I killed like 40 days ago would still be dead. And that bothers me because I'm like,
Yeah.
this doesn't really make sense anymore.
Especially now where unlike Pikmin 1 and Pikmin 3, there's not really a punishment or
For
there's
days.
no real exactly like you can literally take 200 in-game days to beat this game and there's like no difference than beating the game in 50 days, right?
Yeah,
There's
and
no
I,
time
and
limit or juice limit or whatever that you have to worry
yeah,
about.
and I think there should have been a balance. That's it. Like I don't necessarily think they need to make it like Pikmin 1. But I think there should have been a balance. Like even if it was something like once you switch the area you're in, enemies respawn. Like
Mhm.
something like that. Something as simple as that, or every 5 days, or whatever. And maybe bosses don't respawn, or what? Like whatever. I really think that the game could have benefited from that in general,
Mhm.
but that's okay. Speaking of the time piece that you kind of mentioned, what I did really appreciate about this game is because my favorite game is Pikmin 2, but the biggest gripe that most people have with Pikmin 2 is the removal of the time system. And that's why in Pikmin 3 they kind of reintroduced it. It was way more forgiving, but it was still there. Like if you were like blatantly not collecting stuff to make juice out of, you would lose and you'd have to rewind a few days. But for Pikmin 4, I really, really appreciated the fact that they kind of had something that was reminiscent of the original game. Like once you reach the halfway point, you get to play like Olimar's Shipwreck Tale, which is a 15-day time limit.
That was my favorite part of the game, to be honest with you.
And what's cool about that, and this kind of goes back to what I was just saying about like the enemies and all that stuff, what I really loved about that was the fact that, yeah, it was a 15-day time limit, which is actually way more punishing than previous games.
Mm-hmm.
But because you were revisiting the areas that you've already played, and sure, things have changed a little bit, but you feel more equipped. So you feel like you can actually do it because you're not exploring anymore. Like you're going in with the intention of like, I'm going to be efficient. I'm going to get as much as I can. And I like that. And I feel like that was really cool. I almost wish there was like a second shipwreck tale for the last two areas.
So just getting off topic of gameplay for a while, like that Olimar tale, is that like essentially a retelling of Pikmin 1? Or is this a separate time of him like crash landing on the Pikmin planet? Like this game really throws like the Pikmin timeline in a loop.
Yeah, it's very ambiguous. At the end of the day, it's Miyamoto, right? Yeah, he's been very forthcoming. Like story comes second, and with Mario, he's very much like we're retelling stories. Like there's no real Mario timeline either, right? Like the princess gets captured how many times? So you could arguably say, like, as silly as it is, Olimar crash lands again.
But for sure this game takes place after Pikmin 1, but before Pikmin 2.
Well, even that is very ambiguous. Like there's definitely evidence to support that, but even that is ambiguous, right? Like for all we know, like 1, 2, and 3 are like sequels to each other, but Pikmin 4 is its own thing, right? Like and
Yeah.
it just references the other games. Because really, if you look at it as like retconning or retelling Pikmin 1 with the shipwreck tale and like how Olimar found the Pikmin, then Pikmin 1 doesn't exist. And it only references the potential for like Pikmin 2 through like it talks about like Louis like is like, oh, I'm gonna eat pick carrots, and like Olimar's like, oh, I had this nightmare that a colleague of mine ate us like bankrupt,
Mm-hmm.
and they reference the president, and then the people from Alf's planet also are referenced.
Cool pie.
Yeah, Kopai. Their like crew talks about like, oh, if they keep eating the way they do, they're gonna have a food shortage. So there's like references to like these events could happen in the future, but really like this game might not even be canon to the first three Pikmin games. Like this game very well might just be like a reboot in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just gonna be Pikmin moving forward. Like I think just like Mario and even Zelda to a degree, like it doesn't really matter. Like that's not what the game's for.
Nintendo needs to release the extended Pikmin timeline. Pikmin fans need to know exactly how things happen.
And I think it's the way that you can look at it is like it's up to you, right? Like you can say that this game comes after Pikmin 1, right? You get like logically it can. You could say like Olimar got shipwrecked a second time before he went back home after Pikmin 1 on the same planet and found more Pikmin. Right? And then all this stuff happens. And then even though he learns that Louis is a piece of shit, and even though the Kopai people learn about Pikmin earlier than they should, Pikmin 2 and 3 still follow. Right? Like you could say that, or you could say none of those games exist in this timeline, and this game is like completely brand new and none of the games will connect to it. Or you could say like this just retcons Pikmin 1 and Pikmin 2 and 3 follow. Like you can
That's my
really say whatever
headcanon.
you want. Like you
Yeah.
can say whatever you want ultimately, but like at the end of the day, I don't think it really matters. But the story is cute. It has a lot of references to past games. So if you're that's the nice thing too, is like if you're a fan who's played the other games, there's a lot in this game that is really satisfying. But if you're new, I feel like it does a really good job of telling you the story.
I think honestly, it might be the best starting point for new players for the series. I
For
don't think
sure.
you don't need to play the other ones. Like this one is just,
No.
in my opinion, it's leagues better than the other games in the series. And like we just said, like the story is just so insignificant for these games where like you kind of get the gist of what happens in the other games in this game, like through teases and stuff like that. So it's just the most complete experience from beginning to end with so many quality of life improvements
Hmm.
and like small things that add up. Like one of my favorite things that they did honestly was like in Pikmin 3, it was a like you could collect pebbles and stuff to build bridges and things like that. But now you can harvest those materials and then use them wherever you want. You can choose to build a bridge over a ladder, over like a step. Like you can choose to prioritize certain things. I just think that's such a small minor thing that is just really cool. And the other thing that I really
Yeah.
really 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 liked is you can go to a cavern entrance and you can choose to go down to a specific floor just in case you've missed something, or like you want to farm.
Certain Pikmin, yeah.
Yeah, that was the best way to farm purple Pikmin and white Pikmin before you got their onions was going to a specific level of a cavern that you remember that, oh, there was a flower there that could get me 5 Pikmin. You could go to that and you could boost there. It's just a small thing, and like there's just so many of those small things in this game that really elevate the experience.
Yeah, the game is definitely about choice. The game is definitely about power. And I think it was intentional. Like I think like the enemies not respawning and like the world not feeling hostile and the world feeling inhabited by a bunch of like people and like all this stuff. Like I think that was all intentional to
Mm.
create a very different experience. Because even like the nighttime stuff, right? Like when
Yeah,
you leave for night in the cutscene when like all the Pikmin are leaving in all the other games, you see the like bulb orbs and the enemies come near your onions. You see like what would have happened if you left a Pikmin, and if you did leave a Pikmin, you have to watch it die
yeah,
and be chased, right? Like they used to do that.
which is always so
Yeah,
sad.
but they didn't do that in this game, right? Like they didn't even show the cutscene, and they had the nighttime exploration, which made the nighttime not feel as scary or mysterious. So as a result, I feel like the game really was to make the player feel powerful. But like I said, like for the most part, except for the respawning, all of this stuff is mostly optional. Like the rewind is optional. The Ochi being super busted is optional. Farming for the best types of Pikmin is optional. Like,
The nighttime expeditions are optional too. You have to do, I think, one. You don't, or two of them.
but they ultimately don't affect. Like, they don't make the game easier, right? And they are a fun little mini game.
They help you get puppy points, whatever the heck is, to upgrade Ochi, right?
True, but you don't have to use them.
I know, but then also by doing those, you heal more leaflings, which then have more side quests available, which give you more materials, which then you can use to upgrade your captain or Ochi, right? The gameplay loop, I think, is the best it's ever been, also. And another thing I
Yeah,
remember, like, could you move your ship on the map in other games?
maybe in 3, I just don't remember.
Like, yeah, if that wasn't in Pikmin 3, that's fantastic. Being able to like
Yeah,
cut
that
the
was
travel
cool.
time for your Pikmin down, that's so
I
useful.
like that too. And so that's what I mean is I feel the game was the intention was to make it more accessible and to give more option and variety because that's the thing. It's ultimately too while every Pikmin has its own tools and the caves really explore that in the Dandori battles, right? Like they do have
Yeah.
places where they're like you need to use these tools, but for the most part like the surface was about like you choose how you want to play, right? Like you can approach this how you want. If you want to use the strongest types of Pikmin, go ahead. If you want to
Mm-hmm.
use weaker ones, that's fine. If you want to do the side missions, great. If you want to take a day off and go do a night battle, great. There's a lot of variety. There's the Dandori battles, the Dandori fights. There's the nighttime escapades. There's the just like the general daytime collecting, and then there's the caves, which are more like puzzle oriented. There was a lot in this game to love, and there was a lot of variety, and there was a lot to play around with, which was really great.
Not to mention you can explore like someone's house. That's so cool. I just like having Pikmin like interact with like real world objects aside from treasures is really cool. Something I've been wanting them to do for a long time. It's a really small, cool thing.
The locations were definitely cool. Like I think that there was a great variety in enemies, locations.
And some fantastic Nintendo treasures. It's my favorite part of every Pikmin game, to be honest with you.
And I remember when I was going into this game, and even early game, I was kind of like, wow, there's only one new Pikmin. It's only the ice. And like I mean the glow is there too, sure. But like the thing with the glow Pikmin is that it's only available at night and in caves under certain circumstances. But for the most part, like there was only one new one. I remember early on in the game, I was kind of just like, I wish they added more. But by the end of the game, I was actually like, no, I'm actually really happy that they only added one because what I feel like they did really well in this game was they repurposed because they brought back white and purple right from being only in the bonus game in 3. But this game like did a lot for all the other Pikmin. I really felt like purple and white felt almost new in terms of how they differentiated them. Even red, like they gave them the like little pine cone thing, and like they did a good job with differentiating all the Pikmin where it felt like every Pikmin was to a degree necessary. but not so necessary that you couldn't just choose the type you wanted. However, there were times where I was just like, I really wish I had some of these Pikmin earlier on. Or like I end up falling into like the habit of only using the same Pikmin. Like purple Pikmin were just so good. And that's why I didn't use the charge I was saying before. Like you were saying how like you charged with Ochi and like all your Pikmin would go on. I would use the purples and I would throw them because they had the like modifier of red Pikmin in terms of like doing way more damage when they hit, but they
Mhm.
also had the modifier of rock Pikmin that upon impact, if you threw them, they did a ton of blast damage. So I found it was more efficient and more like I did more damage just throwing the purple Pikmin over and over again at something rather than charging in, because the amount of damage each individual Pikmin would do when they hit it was more than having all my Pikmin attacking it at once.
Well, I think we did a pretty decent job of like covering the game as it is, and like the things
Yeah.
that we liked and stuff that we were a little bit not disappointed with, but the things that didn't like as much. But what do you think this game's future and the series future is going to be? Just like quickly, like I'm not personally expecting like any major sort of DLC expansion, but I do kind of expect, like we said earlier, I expect to have sort of small updates that add like minimum like a hard mode, and I personally would want, like, if there's going to be any added content, I want the bingo battles from Pikmin 3 to come back. That's just like one of my favorite multiplayer modes. And any game really, like it's just that good. Like I remember like I didn't finish Pikmin 3 Deluxe, but I spent a lot of time in the multiplayer playing bingo battles. It's just they're just so fun. And I know Dandori kind of does the same thing, but it's they're still different enough where I think that they would have their own place in Pikmin 4. So yeah, I don't expect like a new world or like another Olimar thing or even like a Louis thing potentially. Like I'm not expecting anything like that. Like I feel like the ending of the game is very clear, and we
Yeah.
just gotta wait for Miyamoto to announce Pikmin 5 in like 4 years, but then it actually is like 10 years away. So
I'm kind of the same opinion. I don't actually think there'll be DLC for the game. There might be some updates, kind of like you kind of just said. I can see there being like some kind of like I don't know, like hard mode or like challenge update, especially because the game did so well. And Pikmin 3 got those things and didn't do half as well. So I could see it happening. That being said, I don't expect it. But I am excited for the future of this series because I do think it'll. Like, I think Pikmin 5 is more assured than Pikmin 4 was.
yeah,
Because, like, this game has done so well commercially and critically that I can't imagine they wouldn't continue the series now.
I would take it a step further and say like it's been what 10 years since, or almost 10 years between Pikmin 1 and Pikmin 4. I don't think we're going to be waiting 10 years between games anymore. Like I could see
Yeah,
the
I
next
don't
game come
either.
out like year 2 or year 3 of the next Nintendo console, like 2027.
If Pikmin 5 is going to come sooner rather than later. Well, I do want them to keep a lot of what they've done here. Like the things I've talked about already, such as the like respawning of enemies, like those things. I really hope that they change that back for the next game and add a little bit, like keep all the power that they've added and the variety and add back the respawning because I feel like it'll still feel like you can do it. Like I don't think it'll feel like challenging, I guess is what I'm saying. Like I don't think it'll feel like as challenging as the old games, even if you added in the respawning, because I think at this point they've added so many options that it's going to be somewhat easy, especially for
Yeah.
people who have now started with Pikmin 4. However, I do hope that the next game, I really want them to play around with the Pikmin types. Like one thing that's been consistent of all the games is that your starting Pikmin are the red, yellow, and blue. I want them to introduce new basic types of Pikmin. All the Pikmin that they've introduced since the base ones, the flying, the rock, the ice, the purple, and the white, I feel have all been like these special types, and they've all been really strong and really useful. I want them next game not to introduce like maybe introduce one useful type, but I would love if they introduced like brand new basic ones. Just like something that is like you start the game with. You don't even start the game with red. yellow, and blue. You start the game with these new ones. You start with whatever green and orange or something, and they're just
Glow Pikmin count as green.
yeah. It could be a different shade of green. We have two different blues, so we can get a new green, but
Mhm.
like something just base. Like it doesn't need to have like a ton to it. It doesn't need to have this special overpowered combat ability. Like something easy as like they add a new like traversal thing. Like maybe they add like a desert area that has like quicksand and stuff, and they add like an orange Pikmin that's able to like move through moving sand and stuff. So like just something like that's easy like that.
Well, I think would be a cool type of Pikmin would be one that can like I know you can dig underground in like specific spots, but like one type of Pikmin that can dig underground during combat and can attack enemies from underneath. Or like I feel like there'd be cool puzzle solving things that they can do with like a digging Pikmin. Like that's not even creative what digging is used for in Pikmin right now. I think that's a cool thing that you can do without creating a new biome or whatever. Or even like I don't want this to happen, but if they're not gonna have a Ochi like companion in the next game, just use Ochi's abilities and translate those to new Pikmin types. Have like maybe a large, like super swole Pikmin that can carry other Pikmin and you around, like a carrier Pikmin. It can be its own playable character. I don't know. Like it. I guess I'm kind of just saying do Ochi without doing Ochi, but just I just hope that all those things that Ochi added to the table are just stay in the series in the next entry. Like I feel like because this is going to be the most successful game in the series, probably both critically and commercially, this is your baseline for the series now, and evolve on what you have. Don't subtract from this. Like how Breath of the Wild, like that's going to be the new Zelda going forward. Pikmin 4 is going to be the baseline for Pikmin.
And even if all the Pikmin don't come back, that doesn't bother me.
It's going to get to a point where like they might have no choice but to do what they did in Pikmin 3 again and like sideline two for or two or three types of Pikmin for multiplayer mode, like especially if they keep
Yeah.
adding new ones. So
Yeah, or just do kind of like what they did in this game, where like the caves maybe have the other Pikmin, but like the overworld. Because that's the thing is like flying Pikmin, for example. Like there's no challenges or like traversal stuff around flying Pikmin in on the surface. There's only stuff for them in the caves. And even though you can take them up to the surface and use them if you so choose, there isn't anything really specifically designed for them. And I think that's okay. I think that's what was missing in Pikmin 3 is that they were like, okay, well, we didn't design anything for white and purple specifically, so let's just remove them and put them into the bingo. When really it was just nice to have them. Like even though I never really felt like I needed the flying Pikmin, I still chose to use them because I'm like, I would rather use the flying than the yellow. Because like later on in the game, I don't need the yellow. Like
mhm.
really, like they only had a purpose early on, right? So it's like I hope that they kind of keep with that. Like you don't need to design the game around all the Pikmin types, but bringing them along is nice. Or who knows, maybe we'll get fusions and you can fuse Pikmin together.
I feel like that would be insanely overpowered.
But anyway, like hopefully a very fruitful, treasure-filled future for Pikmin.
Nintendo's most global series, according to Miyamoto, before the game came out. Kind of joked about that, but I still don't agree with that. But it's not as crazy to say that now. Pikmin 4's definitely helped Pikmin elevate their standing on the Nintendo franchise tier list, in my opinion. Like they're not no longer like a C B tier franchise. They're like a B A tier now. Like the Pikmin 4 is just that good. It's like, in my opinion, you can bring Pikmin 4 to the conversation when talking about the best games on the Switch and like one of the most impactful games to its series. Like it can hold itself up against, I'd say, some of the high end 3D Mario's and Zelda games. Like it's like a Metroid Prime level game, in my opinion. Like I think that's a fair comparison. I think.
It's definitely, yeah. Switch is a system full of games that have the best game in their series. And Pikmin's just another example of that, right?
It's going to make our Switch Essentials Part 2 very interesting because we have another Like, we're not gonna have as many big games in part 2 as we did in part 1, but Pikmin 4 is gonna be definitely one that we debate a lot about, I think. Like, it's arguably my game of the year right now, as a little tease for our game of the year discussions. But anyways, I think that is a good place to end things for this episode. So, that brings us to the end of today's episode. If you liked what you heard today, hit that like, subscribe, or follow button. If you want to contribute to the conversation, let us know any ideas you have for upcoming episodes, or just share your thoughts by leaving us a comment. We'll see you next time at the Hub World. Microsoft, make a new Banjo game. See you, everyone.